Alright, what's going on, Bucs fans? What a game that was. I'm recording this on Wednesday, now that I've had time to go back and kind of rewatch a little bit, and, I still have an actual job. This isn't what I do for a living. But like I said on Twitter, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Sure, we wouldn't have been behind if it wasn't for Jameis' turnovers, which, come to find out, in his press conference, he was trying to get Mike Evans' 100-yard or 1,000-yard season. It's kind of strange. I wouldn't really admit that, but nonetheless, that 2-minute drive in our own end zone with no timeouts, and especially making the 4th and 10 throw to Brate, was awesome. I don't care if we lose draft position. Besides, I think it's safe to assume that a quarterback or two will come off the board by the time we pick at 7. We beat a playoff team with all sorts of injuries and bad Jameis. Come on, that's a reason to celebrate, guys. I mean, if you're not going to celebrate a win just because you're moving down a couple spots, then you probably don't deserve to be the fan base. So, now, since we're on the topic of bad Jameis, Thomas Basinger on Twitter brought up a great point, which I've been stressing this to people anyways. I actually did a little bit of research on myself before he posted that, but it was so awesome that somebody else finally came out and said it. Quarterbacks in the first 45 games, Jameis is in good company as far as turnovers go. I mean, this is a list that includes Peyton Manning with 58, Big Ben with 43, Tom Brady with 36, plus, not to mention 36 fumbles, which 13 he lost, and Eli Manning with 43, and he also missed 7 games. Now, these are all Super Bowl winning quarterbacks, and yes, Jameis' issue has been forcing the ball, and his fumbling can also be attributed to awareness and O-line breakdown. Some fans are going through right now what these Super Bowl winning quarterback fans went through in their first 3 seasons of their NFL careers. Now, back to the game. I was taking notes, as I always try to do during games, as being a fan, but also trying to host a podcast. The beginning of this game started off great. I love Dirk's play calling the past 3 games. Winston was on point until the 3rd and 1 where Doug got stuffed. He was 5 for 5 on 3rd downs up to that. And speaking of Doug's, who the Bucs will most likely cut and save something around $6 million or so on the cap, has lost his job to Peyton Barber. Barber runs hard, always falls forwards, averages 4 yards a carry behind the same O-line that Doug's running behind. Still doesn't mean that we don't draft a running back in this draft because Charles Sims is 28 and he's a free agent. Who knows, he might stay or get a deal elsewhere, but I doubt the Bucs pay for a solid role player who hasn't shown he can be a number 1 if need be. Now, as far as the O-line goes in this game, I came away impressed. Besides Leonard Wester, Beninock might turn around to be something with more reps and more coaching, but to play without our best right tackle and our best center was awesome. Jameis also makes the O-line look better than it is with his ability to work the pocket and feel pressure most of the time. Evan Smith gets pushed around, and so does Joe Hawley, but when it comes down to it, I love Joe Hawley's feistiness to Evan Smith, which, by the way, Jameis, according to Pro Football Focus, is 2nd in the league with a 90% passer rating under pressure. Now, which that's another way we could go in the draft, is maybe drafting a guard at 7. I've seen a lot of people saying Quentin Nelson. I wouldn't mind that. I know it's not the sexy pick, but I mean, championship teams are built with decent O-lines, and you win in the trenches. Now, either way, I know we need to go on defense some way, somehow. And yes, I've been on Twitter saying how much I love Barkley, which I think he could help us score those extra touchdowns that we've been so close to losing by. But with Robert Ayers aging like a warm can of beer in the sun, and Noah Spence, who has yet to play a full season uninjured, plus Will Golston, who should only play in run situations because he has no get-off, I'd be happy if we go defensive line or O-line. I wouldn't feel bad at all. Now, back to Jameis real fast, because I'm looking at the box score here, thinking back. I just realized one of Jameis' interceptions that would have been 6 points when he's scrambling to the left and Peyton Barber gets 5 yards past the linebacker in front, and Jameis lobs a jump ball. I mean, I could not believe he did that. That's at least 40, 50 yards, easy. Now, the other 2 interceptions were complete bad plays. Like I said, he was trying to get Mike Evans his 1,000-yard seasons. But, you throw the one inside field goal range down 1 point, and you lob it to Evans, you get picked. I mean, but much like Jameis Winston, the person who I've compared him to the most, and pretty much the same with the interceptions and not having his deep ball down, is Big Ben. I mean, Big Ben and him are almost exactly the same career, minus some wins in the Super Bowl. But I mean, Big Ben had a lot to work with whenever he came in. Let's see, what's my notes here? Oh, this is one thing I wrote down, which I think this is going to be a real thing. Let's talk about an underrated dilemma I think the Bucs have. Starting Deshaun Jackson over Chris Godwin. He balled in this game. He's been balling the past couple games. He made some really tough catches, which he's done all year. He's shown more fight for balls this year than Djax has. Now, don't get me wrong, Deshaun is still an elite weapon, which some say he hasn't been used correctly. Even I've said it. But in all reality, I say he's been used all right, considering he could have had more slants or drags to get him in open space. But if anyone on this team hasn't been used right, it's Mike Evans. Now, sure, Deshaun Jackson doesn't fight for balls. If it isn't right on the money, he don't go out of his way for it. I mean, the film shows that. But if Jameis had connected on half the deep ball targets to him, no one would be saying anything, in my opinion. But there's still no denying Godwin's talent. Plus, he's a 4.4 speed guy, too. I mean, going forwards, worst comes to worst, Deshaun Jackson goes down or whatever. We decide to let him go. However you go, Chris Godwin's got us in good hands on the other side of the field. Also, I want to speak about the strength of this defense, which is linebacker. Levante David's having an all-pro season. If he hadn't missed games, he probably would be all-pro. He's second-team all-pro according to PFF. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, but what I want to talk about was, Kendall Beckwith being the fourth-round guy, coming off ACL. A lot of people didn't really know much about him. He's actually played really well for a rookie, and especially in run defense. But what I want to talk about is Quan. Quan hasn't improved like I thought he would. I mean, sure, he gets his tackles, but in coverage and his tackling, ironically, seem to have fallen off. He over-pursues way more than an elite middle linebacker should. And if he wants to be great, he's going to be compared to Luke Kuechly, which is in his own division. But, I mean, he's still young, passionate, and I don't have a doubt that he won't bounce back. Now, the weakest part of the D, I have to say, is D-line. I think we can all agree that, which I believe Clinton McDonald has outplayed Swaggy Baker by a long shot. Half-sack Swaggy hasn't been a good teammate, which is something the Bucs GM, who we used to see all the time, has said in the past. He only wants good locker room guys. Gerald McCoy's had his best season in a while. He's beating double teams like never before from looking at the last year's film. But if you get him some edge and maybe a young up-and-coming defensive tackle, we can see how great he actually is. Unlike Swaggy, how, we thought would help. But that's not working out. Along with TJ Ward, who also, by the way, breaking news, was arrested today. Now it's all coming out that he was arrested for a failure to appear, and he actually got in trouble for, I think it was October 25th, before the Carolina Panther game. Apparently, cops responded to an alarm. A woman who was at his apartment let them in. They seen the marijuana, which was, I believe, over 99 grams, if I remember the thing correctly, if I remember the tweet correctly. And that was over that. So that's a felony in Florida. And this arrest, which came today, is for failure to appear on that. So I think it's safe to say Swaggy, Ward, and probably Doug Martin are all done for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oh, this was one of the things. This game had a lot of really, really good storylines. After the game, we all seen that embrace from Cutter and Payton, which I thought was Payton giving him love. But then the video comes out with the dialogue of what happened, and you get a salty-ass Sean Payton who dismisses Dirk for saying he didn't see what happened, which he's referring to the fight on the sideline between Jameis and Mike Evans and Lattimore. Which is ironic that not only he came back to Dirk after Dirk is just saying good luck to you, but he's mad about the cheap shot. Now, I know this has already been brought up. Mr. Cheap Shot, Pay for Play, Bountygate got mad over that. But nevertheless, it was a great game that I wanted to win. Like I said, I don't care if we drop 2 spots in the draft. Now we have to look forward to signing our own free agents, cutting some dead weight. Now, as we're going into the offseason, it's time to go back and look at what our team has done statistically compared to the rest of the league. As we know by now, the Glazers extended Dirk, and Dirk says the staff will stay the same for now. Of course, now this is all based off what happened this season, injuries and all, but I'm going to tell you guys some stats here that I was looking at. And this is on offense. So we averaged 4.3 points in the first quarter. And to put that in perspective, the league leader is the Rams at 7.4. Then we go to the second quarter, and we're almost dead last at 4 points, with the league leader being 10-11. As we go to the third quarter, it's 3.6 points, with the best being 7.4. Now here's the best part. We are the league leaders in fourth quarter points, which is 8.9 a game. Now surprisingly, with all that being said, which is where this stat comes in that's kind of funny, New England was the league leader in red zone touchdowns per game, with almost 3. We had 1.6, which is barely 2. And we also had the league average in yards per play, which is 5.6, with the best being 6.3. That's pretty good. And my favorite stat is we are second to none other than New England in first downs per game with 22 compared to their 24. All of these stats are telling with the amount of offensive talent we have, but taking injuries and everything into account is called taking it with a grain of salt. Now, for opponents scoring by quarter, Tampa is dead last at 5.4 points in the first quarter. Going into the second quarter, we're giving up 7.6, with the league worst being 11.3. Going into the third, we're not doing bad, giving up 4.6, with the worst being 6.2. Now into the fourth, when Tampa is scoring its most points on offense, the defense is giving up 5.9, which if you put those stats side by side, the defense can't keep up with opponents and their offense can't score enough early. Pretty common sense, actually. But when you see the stats after watching the film, it's eye-opening. Not to mention, in 2016, we held opponents to a league-leading 4 third-down conversions on average a game, to dead last in 2017 with 6.5. Much like the offense, Quan missing games, Levante, Noah Spence, Vernon Hargraves, and backups all over the field, this should be taken with a grain of salt also. Not to mention Mike Smith blitzing on third downs with the secondary in shambles. Well, guys, that's going to do it for today's podcast. I want to just go ahead and hit you with a couple stats there towards the end to put things in perspective. I know it was really crazy for me to see. I mean, I know we were bad, and if you look throughout the league, the average scores throughout the whole league, it was actually all pretty close. We weren't the only ones winning and losing close games. I mean, the average margin of victory was pretty much the same, besides if you were playing the Rams or the Eagles. But that's going to do it for today. The next podcast is probably going to be Friday. We're going to get into the cap situation, look at potential players that I think the Bucs should look at, not saying pursue, because Jason Light doesn't make splash plays like that, but just in case, and that will know which way to set up our draft positioning and who we'll be looking at. But all right, guys, have a good one, and I hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you later.